Hi, I'm David Brown, and taught in Brentwood for 30 years.
Before we get to that part of it, David,
Oh, okay.
suppose you tell us, where did you get is David a name that is run through your family?
Yes, my grandfather was David Rosenberg.
Was this on your mother or father's side?
My mother's side.
Mm-hmm.
And since that time, the name has been used all throughout the whole family.
Okay.
So,
did you have any nicknames growing up?
I was the skinniest kid that ever was, and one of my nicknames was Tarzan.
Is that right?
Yeah, because I was the exact opposite. If I stood sideways, you wouldn't be able to see me.
And Tarzan, who gave you that one?
The barber, by Logan. He was on the, he had a store on the same block where I lived in Brooklyn. And
okay, where did you live in Brooklyn?
In East Flatbush.
Okay.
At least from what I remember. Moved there when I was 4 years old, but lived in Crown Heights first. And
when you were growing up, didn't most of the kids have nicknames anyway? Many of your friends have nicknames?
Well, they also, because the David Brown's a common name,
mm-hmm.
but I used, they knew my middle initial was O, and it was Oliver. So they called me Ollie, and Oliver Wendell Holmes, Oliver Twist. Hey, Oliver Twist.
So you took a lot of ribbing from your...
Oh, yeah. But they were good kids, and...
Sure. Where was the Oliver from? Was that also a family member?
My mother's sister named me. She loved the name Oliver.
Okay.
And named her daughter Olive. Lucille Olive West was the last name.
Yeah.
So my mother took that, and it's strange because my brother, who's Arnold, had no middle name.
Mm-hmm.
So he was 5 years older than I was.
He got cheated, huh?
Yeah, he got cheated. and I'm glad I did with that name, because my first year at the high school, Tilden High School in Brooklyn, I joined the chorus. And the teacher called the roll and said, David Brown. And a fellow in the back of the room said, here. And I said, here. He said, no, don't answer for anybody. Give me, let me know. I only want one person answering. David Brown, calling the roll. And he said, here. He says, well, David Brown, please stand up. And there was two of us stood up. He says, what's your name? He says, David Brown. What's your name? David Brown. No, one of you is going to change. So I began to use my middle initial. I use that till this day. David O. Period Brown.
You had your own little Ellis Island experience coming through. Did you, first of all, what year were you born, Dave?
I was born in 1930, right about the start of the Depression.
Great Depression, yes. You're a Depression baby and a Roosevelt baby at that.
And right.
Well, actually, 32, right?
Yeah, 32.
So you were under.
I didn't know much of anything. I was 2 years old.
No. Did you have a large family? I mean, there's your mother and father.
Just my mother, father, and a brother and myself. Just four of us.
Okay. And what about uncles and aunts? Did you have a large family there?
Well, my mother had a sister and three brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So there was, and my father had quite a family, a large family. I think there was 4 sisters and 4 brothers.
And tell me about your mother's maiden name now. What was...
Rosenberg.
Her name was Rosenberg. And was your father born in this country?
Both parents were born in this country, born in Brooklyn.
Okay. All right. So I know people look funny at me when I say this, but you spent your whole life on Long Island then. You were born in Brooklyn, Brooklyn being part of Long Island.
Well, they might say so. It was surrounded by water, which I enjoyed. Right. We used to go to swimming at, Coney Island and Brighton Beach, and
take the subway to
Ebbets Field.
But those were in the days when kids could get on the subway and travel all over the city
for a nickel.
And not have to worry.
No.
And parents didn't have to worry.
There was no problem there.
No. Did you tell me a little something about your siblings now?
Well, my brother.
Describe them. Tell me about them.
My brother started to learn he was very musical and started to learn the violin at the age of 7 or 8. And then when he got a chance to go to try out for the High School of Music and Art in New York City, he went there for 4 years. And I didn't do much with music in elementary school, except I occasionally played the piano. I was taking lessons from about 9 till about 13 when I discovered basketball, and I liked that. I liked that better, which I regretted many years later that I didn't work harder on my piano. And my mother had a beautiful voice. Her sister, the one who named me, took my middle name, was a concert pianist. So music ran throughout, the arts ran throughout the family.
I see.
And so my brother, my parents used to take me to Prospect Park for the Goldman Band concerts, to the Brooklyn Museum for
so you had an early appreciation
for the WPA orchestra.
Oh yes,
the Works Project.
Works Progress Administration. Right.
Yeah, WPA orchestra, and they were very fine. And it kind of gave a chance to the people, instead of starving, being a real starving musician.
But also introduce an appreciation for music to young people. That has disappeared from our schools, hasn't it?
I would go to the concerts and I'd go to the water fountain. There was a big water fountain in the center of the sculpture court, and I'd load up with my water pistol and go around shooting the statues with my water pistol. But I was still listening to music while I was there. Couldn't help it.
Now, which uncle was this that used to take you? You mentioned.
No, that was.
Oh, this your brother, rather.
My brother and my parents.
What was your brother's name?
Arnold.
Arnold. Okay. And so, besides Arnold, who else was there? Now, it's just the two of you.
Just the two of us.
Okay.
Yes.
Were there any other relatives that you can think of that really had an important role in your early years? Uncles, aunts?
Yeah, I had an uncle, George. He was a fine artist. He used to be supported. Artists starved during the Depression times, as I recall. And but he used to get. He was a very fine portrait painter, and the government hired him to go and paint pictures of government dignitaries, and he also loved music and played the classic guitar. I have his guitar at home. Yeah, I still have it. And he was he used to play Bach on his guitar.
So he must be archived then in the files in the
it must somewhere,
Washington, someplace, of his work.
And then my mother's brother Howard, he belonged to several groups for acting, and did play groups, which my brother began to do. I had a Brooklyn accent, so it took me years to try to eliminate. Even today, my wife makes fun of my Brooklyn accent.
In moments of stress, that's all. That's when right. How did you and your wife meet?
Very interesting. For me, anyway. Most people know the story. I was married in Norway. And I had gone over, I had saved my money. I was in business with my brother after we both graduated. I was just down in Texas. And I lasted 9 months down there. And then I sold my share of the business to my brother and another partner and came back to New York. And
what kind of business was that at that time?
Pianos and organs, but Baldwin. We were Baldwin dealers.
I see.
But it was just starting out, and really it wasn't a business for three. Excellent business for two, but not for three. Until it got started. And I was very glad to help them get started. I sang anybody that wanted me to sing for them, as long as they gave publicity to the name of the company, the Piano Center, Beaumont.
Mm-hmm.
So
what brought you to Norway after that?
well, what happened is that when I came back to New York after leaving Texas, I first sold pianos for a company for 3 months, and I hated that entirely. And then I went and got a job selling records for Sam Goody when he had one store on 49th Street, and worked
so you
there.
Knew him. So you knew Sam Goody.
I knew him very well.
Okay.
And his son and his son-in-law all were help run the
family
business.
That was on 42nd Street, did you say?
That was 49th Street.
49th Street, because that's the area. Yeah,
That was right near the old Madison Square Garden.
Right. Okay.
So then a fellow came to work in the store who was just learning, because he was from Sweden, from Gothenburg, Sweden. And then a girl came into the store and became friendly. She worked for the United States Information Service in Helsinki, and we became very close, and said we're going to write to each other and that sort of thing. And so I had saved some money, and my brother and his partner sent me the money they owed me for when I was there, and excuse me, and so I said, might as well, when I've got the money and I'm single, and I went and decided on this trip to Scandinavia, Sweden, Finland. I had to visit Denmark, Copenhagen, and but in order for me to visit those places, I had to land, and I got to get there free. You went to your furthest point and you worked your way back back east.
I see.
So but in order to go to Sweden and then Helsinki and Copenhagen, I had to land first in Bergen, Norway, and then in Oslo for a few days, and then went on to where I met my friend in Gothenburg, and even met the girl in Sweden. But before I saw her, when I reached Oslo, I told SAS, Scandinavian Airlines, to find a place for me to stay, because I didn't know how long I was going to stay in each place. I was free as a free spirit.
Yes.
I sort of made my own schedule, and they said, "You must be joking. We have no place to put anybody. We have the." I said, "Oh, I'm sure you'll find something." It turns out that the students of the University of Oslo run their dormitories in the summertime as for overflow
yes, like
which is on the outside. You have to take like a little subway to get there. Well, my wife worked in the souvenir shop.
I see.
So from the time we first met, when I went into the souvenir shop and I told her she spoke English beautifully, I didn't know she was a language major, and she was studying English, French, German, and Old Norwegian, which is like another language, all at the same time. We have kids that can't even learn one language properly.
Wow.
So
it was
she was a language major.
It was almost love at first sight then.
Well, from the time we met to the time we got engaged was 5 weeks.
That's whirlwind.
And 2 of the weeks I wasn't there. I was going to Sweden, Helsinki, and
what
Copenhagen.
year was that you...
That was 1958.
Okay. And from out of your union and marriage, you now have... How many children did you tell me?
I have 2 now.
You have 2 children.
And my daughter is very artistic. She has a master's degree in art history, and is the slide curator at Ithaca College.
That's wonderful.
Her husband is teaching at Ithaca College and at a local junior college in photography.
That's wonderful.
So they met in photography up at Potsdam.
And you called her Archie? Is that...
No, I said she was art history.
Art. What's her name?
Oh, Randy.
Oh, Randy is her name.
Yeah,
and what's your son's name?
Eric.
Eric.
Two Scandinavian names.
Okay, that's wonderful.
And,
Your
and
wife?
I love those names anyway.
What's your wife up to these days? What is she doing?
She's a adjunct professor of languages at C.W. Post College. Has done that for quite a number of years. For German and the Scandinavian languages.
Okay. So she's actively using her skills. And
She is.
Okay. And I'm going to get to all the things you're doing in a little while. We're not going to talk, but as far as the kids are concerned, independent, grown up on their own right now, you must be very proud of both of them.
Oh, I am. My daughter is. Both graduate of the Brentwood schools. Because we live in Brentwood. Besides teaching here, me teaching here.
Are you still in Brentwood today?
The same house we moved into in 1962.
Okay.
So this is the 41st year of
a very different Brentwood in those days, though.
I would say, because ethnically, it's quite.
62. It was almost bordered on the rural. It was suburban, but it was.
The Long Island Expressway had just come out to exit to Wicks Road. When we live right off of Wicks Road, so the expressway went there and stopped.
There were probably still a few chicken farms around in the early '60s.
Well, there was some space for them to build, but Brentwood was filling up even then.
Oh yes,
they had the old Robin Hill.
Yes,
in New York, and so we were in the new Robin Hill.
I see. Okay. Well, you've lived through the boom years, absolutely, from then till now.
Well, when the schools grew so large.
Are there any grandchildren?
I have two. My daughter has two children, and they're just run-of-the-mill geniuses. What can I tell you?
Grandpa, yes. What are they?
They are A students, and
they're not in the Brentwood school.
My granddaughter's name is Matea, Mathea,
beautiful name.
Which is a Scandinavian name. And my daughter says, "You never heard of that name." When I asked her what she was naming my granddaughter, I said, "Randy," I said, "you underestimate me. Not only will I tell you that I've heard of the name, but I'll tell you what it means." She says, "You don't know."
Oh, isn't that great?
So I said, "Well, Matea is the female equivalent of Matthew." And I said, "It exists not only in Norwegian, but in Italian as well. Kathy Matea, the singer."
Yes.
So she says, "How'd you know that?" I said, "Experience."
Yes.
So, and my son's name is Eric, E-R-I-K with a K. And he worked here at the radio station.
Your grandchildren didn't go through Brentwood, though. They're living.
No, they first, when my daughter lived out in California.
I see. Okay.
And while my son-in-law was going for his master's degree in photography at a prestigious school in Oakland. And then he got they were looking around for a place to go. And
do you see family traits in the grandchildren? You mentioned the genius, but do you see the interest?
My granddaughter is very, very creative. She writes stories, as even now, and they're quite good. So she's the writer in the family. I couldn't write anything when I was that age. So, but today they're really fostering. She writes poetry also.
I want to ask you, Dave, if you can pinpoint perhaps your earliest childhood memory. What's the first thing you remember?
Riding a bicycle when I was 4 years old. That's about it. But growing up in a mixed ethnic neighborhood, Italians, Irish, Jewish.
Crown Heights, you said at one point?
No, at the beginning.
At the beginning.
But what I remember was East Flatbush. Not too far from Kings County Hospital.
Okay.
And
so this was a mixed, ethnically mixed.
And the parents, women didn't work.
Right.
Strangely enough, it was the Depression, yet most women didn't work.
And
that was almost unknown for women to work.
That's correct.
Not until the Second World War did that happen.
Right.
And they would stay outside, and even if they couldn't speak all the languages of the different people, they always got along beautifully.
Yeah, and you picked up some of the words from all the languages.
Surely.
Do you have some of the earliest memories of your mother and some of the earliest memories of your father?
My father used to be asked for his autograph.
Is that right?
Yes, because he looked like Clark Gable. But he was much smaller. He was about 5'8", but he had a mustache and he looked just like Clark Gable when he was younger.
Okay.
And they used to ask him for his autograph.
Wow.
And he worked for Prudential and as an insurance agent for East New York and Brownsville.
Who was responsible for your career choice of when you eventually became?
My mother never tried to tell my brother or myself what we should do in life. She tried to foster us. I took piano lessons. I sang in chorus in high school, belonged to a special group called the Caroliers, where we sang arrangements and performed for different groups. And one of the things I remember quite clearly is that I had 6 different teachers in Spanish.
Ooh.
For each one a half year. But one of them was quite well known, Sam Levinson.
Really?
Yeah, the comedian Sam Levinson.
Yes.
And he was so funny.
Who always laughed at his own jokes.
Yeah, but he was so good. He made you laugh too.
Was that in middle school, junior high?
That was in high school.
It was in high school.
That was in high school.
Do you remember your first paying job?
My first paying job, yes. When I was a student at the university to help, my folks sent me $90 a month. And I needed another $30. I got another $30 by singing for the local temple in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, where the university is. And I made $7.50 every time I sang. So 4 times a week while I was there for $30. So I lived on $120 for everything: room, board, music, lessons. Any special accompanist. If I needed a accompanist, I had to pay him.
Okay. Yeah.
$120 a month.
Well, you could do it though. You could do it. Then.
Well, I remember we complained when it reached. When I reached my 4th year there, and I was a graduate student at that year, and we all complained bitterly because it had gone up from $150 to $180 a semester.
Oh yes.
That was terrible.
Did your family have a favorite or an important holiday that they celebrated together during the year?
Well, I can't think of anything in particular.
Okay. I'm just wondering. Sometimes it's a religious holiday. Sometimes it's the 4th of July. Sometimes Okay. Or
I can't think of anything special.
By the way, I've been meaning to ask you this because your life has changed a great deal since you've retired. But maybe this part of it hasn't changed. Are you a morning person or an evening person, a night person?
I'm a night person.
You are.
Oh, definitely. I rarely go to sleep before 12 o'clock.
You must appreciate not having to get up at those early hours.
Well, my wife is an early person.
Okay.
She goes to sleep at 9 o'clock. So she gets a good 3 hours sleep.
You're on
It doesn't hear my snoring, I guess.
Right. You've stayed in Brentwood all these years, so you must appreciate the changing of the seasons. A lot of people that we've known have gone south to get away from the cold. But do you have a favorite season of the year?
Well, I love the spring and I love the fall. Okay. The summer is, in summer you'll find me going downstairs in my basement, which is always cold, always cool. And this winter has been...
This is one to remember, isn't it?
Just terrible. From early December till now, only in the last couple of days we had... it was below freezing almost the whole time.
Speaking of remembering, run through the schools that you attended as a student from beginning through your finishing your formal education.
I started off and I lived 2 or 3 doors away from my elementary school, so I could be found in the. I love sports. I was a Brooklyn Dodger fan. My father got bought me a basketball, and I would be found throwing hoops. So I loved basketball, and I found that I was quite athletic. And I was.
Well, it was the sports that seduced you away from music early on.
Earlier, yes.
But
then I was able to combine it later on when
yes.
when I was in college, and I took a physical education class in fencing, and joined the AFLA at that time, Amateur Fencers League of America, which is now the United States Fencing Association, and I'm still active in that. And that was when I joined that was 1952.
You tend to make lasting commitments,
don't
you?
I do. 51 years, and I'm still volunteering.
Isn't that wonderful?
In fact, we had a big competition last Saturday,
that's wonderful.
And I directed for 4 hours.
Oh, that's marvelous.
Yeah.
Did you have least favorite subject in school?
I was not a lover of mathematics, and I'm not a lover of science.
Interesting, because music
English.
Music's dependent so much on math, and it's interesting. It's a language of its own. It's true, but it's so logical. But math was one of your passions, I guess.
Something happened to me that made music even more important, and that was when I was 15. I came down with a heart murmur. And from 15 to 18, I did no sports at all, no basketball, nothing, none of the street activities that the kids did at that time.
Was that related to a rheumatic fever or something? Or?
I believe that was not rheumatic fever. What's another one?
Scarlet fever?
Scarlet fever.
Scarlet fever.
I had scarlet fever.
Okay.
And they believe that's what caused it.
That's what caused it. So you've struggled with that all your life, then?
I have the heart murmur now, and I'm 73 years old now.
So you have to be. You're conscious of it.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
But it hasn't slowed you down, David.
No, because I think a sedentary existence is for most people is a disaster. So even after 30 years of being the coach of the Brentwood High School fencing team, is that when I retired, I couldn't stay out of it, and I coach at a private club on Mondays and Wednesday nights.
Isn't that terrific? Yeah.
And I kept up with my skills as a fencer for 21 years. I was the coach of the Long Island team for the Empire State Games, the fencing team, and also competed myself. I got so many medals for that on the Masters.
So you and Jeff Wolf worked together for a while.
Oh yes,
yeah.
In fact, I brought him into. He's coming good. He retired earlier than I did, but now is going to be donating his time. He misses it terribly.
Does he really?
Yeah, as I would have done if I just went cold turkey, and dropped out.
Yeah. I want to get to that part of our discussion, but first I have to ask you what year you first came to Brentwood.
Well, my first year was 1961-62.
That's when you moved here, right?
No. Well, that was when I started teaching here, and I lived in Brooklyn.
Oh, I see.
I lived in Brooklyn, and I got the job out here, and that was interesting because
there was no Long Island Expressway.
When I came out, and they said, Mr. Brown, we like your... I taught for 2 years in New Jersey, so I had experience. And Pete Cirillo was the music supervisor, and I was interviewed by the principal of South Junior High School, Mike DeSillis, and the assistant principal was Jeff Dwyer. So I started out in the South Junior.
Questions from that interview?
Well, I remembered. No, I'm sorry. I was interviewed by the principal of South Junior High, whose name I forget.
Okay,
I'm very bad at names now.
All right, it's okay.
But he quit and took over and started a private school in Bayshore. And so when I came back and Mike DeSillis who was the assistant principal, became the principal, and Jeff Dwyer took over as assistant principal, I said, do I still have a job? Because the guy that hired me left.
Yes.
So I went, am I still hired? He says, your contract is with the district, not with the principal.
Okay. Yes.
But
do you remember anything specific about the interview? Were there any questions that?
Yeah, well, I remember that they called up and asked Pete Cirillo if he'd like to come over and help interview me. He said, "No, go ahead. I trust you."
Okay.
I didn't meet him until later on, and he's a very good friend now.
Yes. Yes. What were some of the first impressions you had when you came out from Brooklyn to Brentwood, and you not alone began working here, but you also made it your home? What was it like in those days?
What was wonderful about starting at South Junior High School is that there was an experienced teacher there, and who was there for many years, Donna Wyatt, and she was one of the nicest people you ever want to meet, and helped me immeasurably. And I started a 7th and 8th grade. She had basically a 9th grade chorus and some 8th graders, but I started a 7th and 8th grade girls choir.
Oh.
That did very well, and some of those people were just outstanding.
Those were in the days when the music department in Brentwood, though, was really something. I mean, those early days when the Green Machine was known all over the country. I mean, we had it, and the department.
Well, they didn't call it Green Machine then. That came later on.
That came later. But
that came later.
But it built to the point where our department
they have to have good beginnings.
Yes,
and
yes.
They had some wonderful people that...
You always taught at the same level, did you?
Junior high school at South Junior High for 2 years. Then when they opened up, then West Junior High opened up, and they said, David, would you like to go over to be the first music teacher at the new junior high school? And Jeff Dwyer took over as principal of that one.
Okay.
And so I said, I'll be glad to,
yes.
you know. Mm-hmm. So I went over there and I started 9th grade chorus.
Okay.
And they did very well. When I took them to contests, they did superbly. And some of the kids the boys that were in were wrestlers.
Oh,
I remember
neat.
having.
That's neat. They were in chorus.
They were in my chorus.
Isn't that neat?
The good fellows who are well known even today. They know their names. Like there's pictures of them in the high school. Bob Bender, and one other boy, another young fellow that was in was Carl Adams, and he became an international wrestler in college.
Marvelous.
And for the country.
And then you came up to the high school too.
Well, no. I never taught at the high school level.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
I was under the impression that you had coached up at the high school.
Oh yes,
Okay.
My team was
Okay.
from 7th through 12th. In other words, since you don't have, I had kids that started out in the 7th through 12 were on my team for 6 years, because if there's no junior high school group in your sport, you can join the high school team. So I had kids coming out at 7th, 8th, 9th grade.
Okay.
And by the time in 9th grade, some of them were pretty good.
Now, you had of course, a contract, and you had a job description, but that's not necessarily what drove you. When you came to work, and you came with a purpose entirely your own, and I'm just wondering if you could put that into words. What was your purpose?
Well, the love of music, and the idea of I felt like I was a natural teacher.
Okay.
And I could impart my love of music, because from the time I was 15 to 18, I told you about that heart murmur, I listened to music on the radio, and I read every music book I could find.
Mm.
I remember one of the first composers that I began to really enjoy was a man named Hector Berlioz.
Yes.
And this year, in 2003, they're celebrating the 200th anniversary of his birth, his whole year.
Isn't that wonderful?
So
Yes.
that's Hector Berlioz.
And an early influence.
And my brother, being a violist, and went to Juilliard from 46 to 49, and I started collecting. He was too busy to collect records, but I wasn't. So I became a record collector
Did
also.
you really? Oh.
Well, now I have 5,000 records in my basement. My wife says, the records can stay, but you go.
I only know one other person that collected opera, and that was somebody over at IMC,
Joe Spano.
Spano, who
Good
collected, who collected Enrico Caruso, and
Well, his wife was a secretary. See, after 8 years at West Junior High, I decided I wanted a change, and I went down to elementary school for 20.
Mhm.
So I taught for 30 years in Brentwood,
Okay,
and actually 30 years as coach, but they weren't simultaneous.
they weren't.
One
yes,
began
yes.
10 years after the other. So I was connected with the Brentwood schools from 1961 to when I retired in 1991.
1991. Okay. Hmm.
No, 1961 to 1991, 30 years.
Got it. Were you ever active in the BTA or the union? Did you ever have a role in any?
There were so many other things that I did and volunteered that I never felt that I could devote the time.
And that's totally reasonable because there's only so much time in a day, and if you were giving in other areas, which
Well-
you were. What were some of the things that you were doing?
Well,
Did you have a second job while you were teaching? too?
yes. In order to help make
Ends meet.
I taught. I sold shoes for 16 years in Bayshore, Green Shoe Store,
Okay.
and then so at in the malls I sold kid shoes, stride ride shoes.
Uh-huh.
I did that for 16 years.
You didn't want to do that when you retired, though.
No, there were two things I said when I retired that I was not going to do. I was not going to teach, although fencing is I teach also, but that's coaching. But I would not teach, and I would not sell.
And you stuck to it.
Yeah, it was
Yes.
for basic. But no, I'm so more or less selling my excess records on eBay.
Oh, so you know how to do that now. You've taught yourself how to sell on eBay.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And you're selling, you said your excess records, your duplicates, you mean? Or
Duplicates and ones that I know that are valuable that I picked up.
Okay.
For instance, I just sold a record for $270 to a fellow in Switzerland.
Remarkable.
I paid 50 cents for the record.
Oh, remarkable. I love to hear stories like that.
That I feel good about that one.
Yes. Oh, boy. All right, you retired in 1991, you said. What have you been doing since then?
Well, I just retired last year after 21 years as the coach of the Long Island fencing team for the Empire State Games.
Mhm.
And I won my last gold medal at the age of 69 when the Empire State Games were on Long Island.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife, my daughter, my son-in-law, my two grandchildren, two of my three grandchildren were there to watch me win it. So I was very pleased with that.
Is there something with all of the accomplishments that you have stacked up over the years, Dave? Is there any one thing that you really are proud of, out of all proportion to the rest, or
no? Because they're all a part of the. For instance, even now on twice a month for 2 hours every other Wednesday, I broadcast for WUSB Stony Brook and have a classical, which I've done that for 21 years. I'm in my 22nd year for that one.
So you have your own radio show.
I have my own radio
at
program
Stony Brook University.
at Stony Brook.
And it deals primarily with serious music, classical
music.
I say serious music because classical is just a period. That's why.
Well, I
you're using it
because I think
in the larger sense.
jazz is valuable.
Interesting, sure.
Even some, a lot of rock and roll I think is worthwhile. My son is a Deadhead, by the way.
Is that right? Yes.
he likes the Grateful Dead.
Where was the last assignment for you when you were working here at the district?
Southeast Elementary.
I see. Okay.
Matter of fact, my first year at Southeast Elementary, I gave an award for best music student to a young man, which I'm very, very proud of. Of course, he'd worked with other teachers before that, you know. But I was so proud of him. Frank Cannon Jr.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
And so I knew Frank Cannon very well. I taught his other two younger sons than Frank Jr. And Frank Jr. is now teaching music in Brentwood.
Wonderful. Yeah. And Frank, we've just lost not too long ago.
I went to the wake there, and it was just I could hardly talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said because he was a good friend down through the years, and they named the school after him.
And they did.
So
do you remember what you were paid your first year here teaching?
I think somewhere around $5,000. I'm not exactly sure. Thank heavens I don't remember that salary.
Okay. There's a lot of other things to remember since then.
Yeah.
What did you? Is there one thing that you enjoyed the most about being a music teacher, or about being working with kids? Is there one thing that you can point to say?
Well, I've always tried to treat it very seriously. And we started with the Manhattan curriculum when I went to the elementary school. And then through, I more or less taught music appreciation of the junior high when I taught there. Taught them about the instruments of the orchestra, how they made families of instruments and played the music. And there was one work that I played through 2 years in New Jersey and 30 years here. To every senior class that I had, I played for them, whether it was sixth graders or whether it was eighth graders. I tried to play one work that was called The Planets of Gustav Holst.
Oh, yes.
And that was as an educational experience that I never got tired of, and the kids enjoyed it tremendously.
Yeah. You can still feel the emotion every time.
Oh, I did, because...
and you convey that if you feel it.
And I tried to
it.
things that I know that they would enjoy. For instance, I played a work called Bolero of Ravel.
Yes.
And I asked the kids before I started to play it, how many of you think you would enjoy listening to a piece of music that lasts about 14 or 15 minutes and doesn't change? It's the same melody throughout the whole work. What will change is the instruments, but basically it's the same melody and the same rhythm, a bolero rhythm that lasts for the whole work. I said, how many people think they would enjoy hearing that?
No.
The kids, a lot of hand raised. Then at the end of the work, as it gets stronger and louder, you know, through crescendo, and then they're getting more and more involved with it, and I can see they're tapping, their foot tapping and the thumb. And they enjoyed it. I said, how many people really enjoyed that? And the whole class. Right?
Oh, that's great. What a great lesson.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
So I try to do what I appreciated, especially when I was young, growing up, and listening to the record, listening to music. I tried to use that as a basis.
What are you already missing the most about teaching? I say already, even though you've had a couple of years.
One of my students that I had for 5 years, his first 6 years of his life, first through sixth grade, I'm not including kindergarten because I didn't teach kindergarten, was a young man. The only thing that he's known for now, he's the music supervisor of music at Comac schools.
You've made your mark there.
So,
yes.
Paul Infante, and
terrific.
I remember him so well.
Do you have a book that you can identify as having had a powerful influence on you or on your life?
Well, while I was growing up in my teens, I belonged to a group called the American Youth for Democracy, AYD. And I remember going out and collecting nickels and dimes to fight Senator Bilbo in Mississippi. And I made friends with people of all races and creeds. And
What was Senator Bilbo in Mississippi
the
about?
racist of the worst order.
I see. Okay, I never heard the name.
Oh, you never heard of Senator Bilbo?
Never heard the name before.
Well,
Okay.
maybe you're not as old as I am.
Well, almost, but not quite. No,
Yeah.
okay.
That was about 1945, 46, somewhere
Okay.
around there. And we went out collecting, and so because I've always loved the differences in people that make us so great in this country.
Well, we sure had that in Brentwood, didn't we? In terms
Well,
of
it
difference.
started off when I first came here that there was about 50% white, 30% Hispanic, and 20% black.
Mhm.
And I had some wonderful students from all of those, from all of the groups.
Right.
And when I left, it was switched over mostly
Yes,
Hispanic.
it's a minority school district for the
And,
most part now.
I had no problem.
Right.
I had no problem.
Are you worried for the future of public education? Do you give any thought to where we're headed, or see things that you wish you could have changed but were not able to change? Is there anything like that in your past? Something that you would like to have been able to do but couldn't?
Well, I wish
see?
I could have been more involved in the BTA and stuff. I did go up with when they had when it's part of the Robs School, we went up to fight
To
for
Albany, yes.
cola,
Yes.
up there. And if I wasn't so busy, I would probably have gone up to fight for the library, for
Yes.
and for the schools.
Yes.
The schools are going to be desperate for money.
Oh, it sounds that way. Yes.
I don't know why they've had such tremendous troubles with their finances. But then it's on the national level too.
Yes. Sure it is.
I mean,
sure it is.
forgive me, President Bush, but when you had $1 trillion and you decided to give everybody 500 or 600, that was a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
You could have shored up Medicare and Medicaid. Could have shored up. What does he want to privatize now? Social Security.
Social Security. I'm sure that
Which is what we're concerned with.
In hindsight, everything now is focused on one thing. and that's-
Unfortunately, it's,
Yes. Is there some advice that if you were asked to provide the benefit of your experience to somebody just coming into the classroom today, is there some advice that you might offer a young teacher beginning?
I would. Did you ever watch James Lipton on television?
Yes.
With the interview program.
Yes, yes,
And he asks those questions, and they say, "What is your favorite word?"
yes, yes.
I would mention a word which nobody ever mentions: create. Create interest in your subject, so that the people will leave your class and with have them be very creative, which I've always tried to do all my life, is be creative.
I dare say
I
you-
wrote music. I was very, very proud of the fact that when I went down to elementary school, I had people praised my recorder first group, and then my flutophone group, and then recorder group. That they could play on a concert in 4 parts, which was just phenomenal.
Well, I think that you've already imparted a great deal of that philosophy, not just to your students, but to your own children, because they're out there doing exactly that, creating and sharing. Is there
Where
anything-
my son came, he's an accountant. And me, I hated math. And my wife did too.
Your wife did what?
Hated math.
Is that right? So it came from somebody there.
Yeah,
or-
well, I had a teacher in
That's
high
wonderful.
school her name was Miss Wallace, and I called her Wallace the Witch. She hated me. She sent me up to the board. And
but you remember her, though.
Oh, do I remember her? Until finally, I would say more than half the year had gone by, half of the semester had gone by. And she sent me to the board to do a problem. And usually I was a butt of everybody's laughter when I couldn't do it. I got it right.
You weren't still called Tarzan at that time.
No, not by that time. But
You filled out, yes.
Yeah, and I got it right. And she said nothing, and the class went silent because I got a question right, and then I did well for the rest of the year.
Dave, what are we forgetting? Have we covered all our bases?
I don't know. You're the
Well,
question.
I can't think of anything other than a memory that you might have of Ebbets Field. Did you ever go to a game there?
Oh, many times.
You did.
Up in the galleries up there,
in the gallery,
in the
yes.
bleachers, with Hilda Chester.
Uh-huh.
Hilda Chester had a cowbell. She rang that cowbell, and we I'll never forget one time they stole her cowbell. Well, she cried, and I said, "Boy, this is cruel." Until finally someone brought it, gave it back to
the symphony, the Brooklyn
and I
Symphony.
remember the Brooklyn Symphony.
And Happy Felton and
Happy
his Knothole
Felton,
gang.
Knothole, yes.
Yeah,
I remember that.
That was
Well,
a
see,
time-
I could take the trolley car
yes,
for a nickel
Yes,
and then
yes,
get a
and get
transfer even to go,
get Bedford Avenue and get.
get it right.
Thank you very much, Dave. You've
Well, this
been
was
a
a pleasure.
delight. It was a pleasure to finally get a chance to do this, and I can't wait to share it with everybody else.
Well, thank you very much.